Hi everyone, let's talk about this Salisbury poisoning case involving Sergei Skripal. I haven't commented on it in the last few days for two reasons. First of all, I was ill and my face blew up and I ended up looking like something out of the Goonies, although some of you will say I already do. And the other thing is I wanted to get all the facts right first, and I wanted to not jump to any conclusions either way and just get the facts and get an informed opinion rather than just listening to the mainstream media. And I wanted to get the opinion of a wide range of different sources as well. So the first thing we need to know is who this Sergei Skripal guy is or was. He is a former Russian army colonel convicted of passing the identities of Moscow agents working undercover in Europe to MI6 in 2006. Okay, so he's a Russian army colonel who gave MI6 the information of undercover agents in Europe. So as far as Russia are concerned, this guy's a traitor. He was found out of being a traitor in August in 2006. After being convicted of high treason in the form of espionage, he was sentenced to 13 years in prison. 4 years later, in 2010, as part of a spy swap deal where the US and the UK gave Russia 10 of their spies and sleeper agents back, the UK and US got 4 spies back in return for it, one of which was this Skripal. He went on to live openly in Salisbury since 2010 without incident, as far as I can tell. And then, obviously, 10 days ago, he gets poisoned, along with his daughter. He's critical at the moment. Let's hope he pulls through. Immediately, the press jump on the Russia bandwagon. There are lots of allegations flying about in the press, as you can probably see up here. And then Theresa May comes out with this statement in the House of Commons. This was from a couple of days ago. And she says it's highly likely that Russia were involved. Take a look.
It is now clear that Mr. Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with a military-grade nerve agent of a type developed by Russia. This is part of a group of nerve agents known as Novichok. Based on the positive identification of this chemical agent by world-leading experts at the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory at Porton Down, our knowledge that Russia has previously produced this agent and would still be capable of doing so, Russia's record of conducting state-sponsored assassinations, and our assessment that Russia views some defectors as legitimate targets for assassinations, the government has concluded that it is highly likely that Russia was responsible for the act against Sergei and Yulia Skripal. There are therefore only 2 plausible explanations for what happened in Salisbury on the 4th of March. Either this was a direct act by the Russian state against our country, or the Russian government lost control of its potentially catastrophically damaging nerve agent and allowed it to get into the hands of others. This attempted murder using a weapons-grade nerve agent in a British town was not just a crime against the Skripals. It was an indiscriminate and reckless act against the United Kingdom, putting the lives of innocent civilians at risk. And we will not tolerate such a brazen attempt to murder innocent civilians on our soil.
So Theresa May has said, Russia did it, Governor, they're the guilty party, slam dunk, closed case, thanks very much. And she said, OK, Russia, you've got until midnight to respond to these allegations, otherwise there are going to be consequences. To which the Russian diplomat said, can we have samples of the nerve agent so we can test, obviously, because otherwise we're just in the dark about everything and we can't shed any light on it. That never happened, and the UK have now ejected 23 Russian diplomats as a result of not getting a response. Now, what's interesting to me is whether they actually got the response and got a sample of the nerve agent. And I wasn't the only one who thought that. Jeremy Corbyn also thought it, and he brought up this question in the House of Commons. Let's take a look at that.
I welcome the fact the police are working with the OPCW. And has the Prime Minister taken the necessary steps under the Chemical Weapons Convention to make a formal request for evidence from the Russian government under Article 9.2? How has she responded to the Russian government's request for a sample of the agent used in the Salisbury attack to run its own tests? Has high-resolution trace analysis been run on a sample of the nerve agent, and has that revealed any evidence as to the location of its production or the identity of its perpetrators? And can the Prime Minister update the House on what conversations, if any, she has had with the Russian government?
Did you see Theresa May's response there, her visual response, the way she reacted when Jeremy Corbyn asked the question? I'm going to try and zoom it in here onto this clip. Take a look at how she responds.
How has she responded to the Russian government's request for a sample of the agent used in the Salisbury attack?
So, as you can see from that reaction, I think it's fair to say that Theresa May didn't give the Russians a sample of this Novichok for them to test and to find out where they think it came from. She's expelled 23 Russian diplomats as a result, although this says spies, which is they're just diplomats, they're not spies. Independent, that's bad reporting. They're one of the better ones in the UK as well. And also there's now talk of the UK putting sanctions on Russia as a result. Okay, now this has not gone down well in Russia, as this article says, and this is reporting from Dmitry Babich, who is a political analyst based in Moscow, and he said the Russian public simply does not believe that President Vladimir Putin or anyone in the Russian intelligence would order such a murky way of getting rid of this person, poisoning him in a public place with a highly dangerous substance. Skripal's poisoning was widely seen in Russia as a secret plan carried out by the British or American intelligence services in order to make Moscow look bad, he said. So this Babich guy is reporting that Russia and the Russian people are saying this is a false flag by the British and American intelligence in order to ramp up tensions with Russia as a result. Okay, now where could this Novichok have come from? There's no way really that they could test where it had come from in the UK. All they've got is, hey, it's Novichok, we've identified it, Russia used to do it, therefore it must be Russia. But the truth is, it could have come from anywhere. It doesn't have to be Russia. And in the world that we live in at the moment, with especially false flags in the Middle East with the white helmets and these gas attacks in Syria being actually conducted by the rebels on themselves or on the people of Syria in order to make Assad look bad and bring America into the war, it wouldn't be the first time this has happened in the last few years, you know? And this guy in the Irish Times called Seamus Martin has actually got some backstory on this. He says unlikely that Vladimir Putin behind Skripal poisoning. I'm going to read quite a bit of this because it's actually important. He says the nerve agent called Novichok is a very deadly substance, 8 times more powerful than its Western equivalent known as VX. I'm going to come to back to VX later, because there's a point I want to make about this movie, The Rock, which those string of pearls, that's meant to be VX gas, and it's got Nicolas Cage in, and he's some expert on it. I'll come back to that because that's important. But anyway, it's sort of the Russian equivalent to VX, and it's 8 times as bad. There are also indications that it could have been smuggled out of the former Soviet Union as far back as 1993. In September of 1993, as the Irish Times Moscow correspondent, I obtained a list of chemical and biological weapons, including Novichok, that were being produced by Russia as the successor state to the Soviet Union. I brought these documents to the recognised expert at the time, Dr. Thomas Stock of the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Man, that's a long name. Dr. Stock's reaction, the expert in Sweden, was that Russia immediately needed Western financial help to stop Novichok and other chemical and biological agents being exported illegally by criminal elements. Western help arrived eventually, but it was too late. The countries of the former Soviet Union, with the exception of the Baltic regions, were in chaos at the time. There was money to be made in those days when inflation had reached 2,500% in a single year. Those who became extremely rich by selling natural resources, military equipment, or anything they could get their hands on became known as the Russian oligarchs. But not all the oligarchs were Russian. The main production plant for Novichok was in Uzbekistan. which now isn't part of Russia. That was part of the Soviet Union. That's one of the former Soviet states. So the main production plant that the Soviets had for this was in Uzbekistan, which is not in Russia. Okay. He goes on to say, it is also possible that Novichok has since been produced illegally. It is made from chemical elements which are harmless on their own but lethal when combined. Theresa May's first scenario, that the Kremlin was directly involved, seems unlikely. Skripal was in the UK as part of an official spy swap deal with Russia. The only suggestion of suspicious activities on Skripal's part has been a report in the Daily Telegraph that he was close to an unnamed person in the organisation run by Christopher Steele, who produced the dossier claiming Russia had compromising material on Donald Trump. Okay, so this guy's connected to the Steele dossier in some way. The plot thickens. For President Vladimir Putin to have launched such a vicious attack would have been counterproductive, as it would jeopardize any spy swaps in the future. Okay, now I'm starting to lean one way. Now I'm getting to the bottom of it. It's okay, I'm starting to lean one way now. I'm starting to see where the facts are leading. And it's incredible. You do this every time with the press, and the press will say something, and the media and the government will say something, and then once you delve into the details, all of a sudden what they're saying is cast iron proof is not. This article goes on to say there have been comparisons made with the murder of Alexander Litvinenko, poisoned with polonium in London back in 2006, but this took place under very different circumstances. Former Canadian ambassador to Russia and former High Commissioner of Canada in London, Jeremy Kinsman, made this point clearly in a recent interview on Canadian TV. Litvinenko was not in Britain on an official deal arranged between London and Moscow first off. He was also, unlike Skripal, involved in activities that were strongly disapproved of by Russia. The Kremlin had far greater reason to have Litvinenko eliminated than it had to launch an attack on Skripal, and this brings us to the oligarchs. He goes on to talk about the oligarchs now. So now you're starting to see, okay, this is the fuller story. The fuller story is this attack has obviously taken place. Now, what you've got to ask is, what does Vladimir Putin, if he did do this attack, what would he get out of it? And the answer to that question is absolutely fucking nothing. This guy was forgotten about as far as Russia are concerned. They did the deal, that's it, it's all done, he's living in the UK, we've got our spies back, you've got yours, fair enough, all's fair in love and war. So he's got no reason to take him out. What possible reason could he have? This is on the verge of an election in Russia. I believe it's going on in the next few days. And then they've got the World Cup coming up in June or July. The biggest sporting event on the planet is in Russia. He's not going to jeopardize any of that, for Christ's sake. Why would he do it? And where's the evidence to say that it was Russia, when this Novichok stuff could be produced anywhere because the materials can be gotten from anywhere? And also, it could have come out of Uzbekistan back in 2003 when the USSR was crumbling. So there are lots of questions unanswered here. In fact, every single question is unanswered. And the primary one is there any proof that Putin or Russia was behind it? And the answer to that is no, there isn't. Now, what is interesting is seeing exactly how the press in this country have reacted. I'm going to bring up some clips here and talk over them. You will find extreme similarities with the way the American press reacted to the DNC hack. Okay, so first off, there's this in the BBC from a few days ago, and I found this quite interesting. Jose Mourinho, MP, says Man United boss will be taking blood money by working for RT. This is smearing. This is smearing of anybody connected to Russia today. It's happened in America. Now there's that banner on YouTube whenever you're watching an RT video. And this accusation from an MP, it was the MP Chris Bryant, who's actually a Labour MP working for Jeremy Corbyn. So you can see here, this is not a partisan thing. These are a selection of the newspapers from this morning. Metro, Pushovsky ramping up tensions with Russia and anti-Semitism towards Russians. Daily Express, I'm surprised actually they haven't got anything linked here to Princess Diana somehow on their front page. They usually do. Dead Russian was on Putin's hit list. Really? Was he? Was he on that hit list? Where did we get that information from? We must bolster our defences. That's the Daily Tory graph. They are saying, oh, we need to spend more money on the military and get our defences up just in case these Russians try it again. And then we've got the Sun, Putin's puppet. Just because Jeremy Corbyn refused to blast Russia over something that there's no evidence that they are the perpetrators of. He's Putin's puppet because of that. Now, who else in the world is known as Putin's puppet? You know, who else has been accused of that in the last couple of years? It really, the similarities are striking. The Guardian, which is one of the better newspapers in the UK, I will say, so it just says Russia threatens retaliation as May expels 23 diplomats. Although the Guardian, having said that, they've got their faults as well, don't get me wrong. And then we come to the Daily Mail. Corbyn, the Kremlin stooge. Just as that you would expect from the Daily Mail, really. Corbyn, the Kremlin stooge, mutinous Labour MPs accuse him of appeasement for not condemning Putin. He wants Moscow to run own poison tests. There's nothing wrong in that as far as I'm concerned. His spin doctor suggests our spies can't be trusted. Okay, that's the Daily Mail's take. What I want to come back to, though, is this in the Guardian, which was about that VX gas. Now, this goes back to the Chilcot report, which is the report that basically led to the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And in that article, in The Guardian, it says, the man behind 1996 thriller The Rock has expressed his amazement. A key detail from the plot was apparently used by an intelligence agent to fabricate evidence which was aided in the case for the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Speaking to The Guardian on Friday, David Weisberg, who co-scripted the Sean Connery-Nicolas Cage hit with late writing partner Douglas Cook, said the green glass globes feared to be central to the agent's evidence were complete fabrication, pure invention, designed to try and add visual excitement to a dull technology. So those pearls, as you could see them in this picture, that's not the way VX gas works at all, but according to the Chilcot report, it was, and that was one of the things that led to the invasion of Iraq in 2003. It's not like we're breaking new ground if this is a false flag or evidence is being fabricated to blame another country. It's not like this is the first time it's ever happened. It's happened before. This goes on. The Chilcot report published on Wednesday found that Britain's secret intelligence service was led to understand Saddam Hussein's regime was continuing to produce weapons of mass destruction based, in part, on the testimony of a source said to have direct access. This information, revealed in September 2002, claimed intensive anthrax production was underway in the country. Chilcot's findings reported that questions were raised after it was pointed out that glass containers were not typically used in chemical munitions, and that a popular movie, The Rock, had inaccurately depicted nerve agents being carried in glass beads or spheres. So the Chilcot report, just highlighted that the evidence that Saddam Hussein had these weapons of mass destruction and chemical weapons was based on purely fiction. It was based on a film. It's not the first time it's happened in the Chilcot report. That's just to correct myself in case I got that wrong. Interestingly, as well, this is from Laura Kuenssberg. This is today. Motion being scrambled by Labour MPs to back PM's view that Russia definitely culpable, taking a very different line to Corbyn. Now, Laura Kuenssberg is the senior political editor for the BBC. So she's the top of the tree in the politics reporting at the BBC, and she said these list of MPs, Labour MPs, are going to back Theresa May. Now, just looking down that list, you can see at the bottom Ruth Smith, and I'm just going to quickly link you to this. Ruth Smith. This is from WikiLeaks. This is, I believe, from the CIA, although I'll have to check on that. Labour prospective parliamentary candidate for Burton, Ruth Smith, strictly protect. CIA, told us April 20th that Brown had intended to announce the elections on May the 12th. This is going back to the early 2000s, like the late 2000, 2008, 2009. Ruth Smith had informed the CIA that Gordon Brown was going to hold a new election. And she's informing the CIA about it. One of the women on this list that is going to back Theresa May. Do you see how the fabric is being woven here? Can you see how all the pieces are coming to place? This is my honest opinion of it. Who perpetrated this? Who poisoned this guy? I have no idea. What I do know is Putin and Russia have, as far as I can tell, no real need to do it. This is a guy that, although one newspaper said was on his hit list, I suppose Putin probably had never heard of him, to be honest, or wouldn't remember his name. So who did it? Who knows? But your guess is as good as mine. But I would put really good money on it not being anything to do with Russia or anything to do with Putin. Certainly not state sanctioned anyway. There would be no point of it. I'll keep you up to date on this going forward as to what's happening. I've got to delve more into the evidence that was part of said he was close to somebody who was friends with the Steele dossier. That's really, really interesting if that was the case. Putin wouldn't have anybody on the hit list connected to the Steele dossier. The only people who would really be worried about anybody connected to that are the people at Fusion GPS and the Democrats, I would think. But anyway, the plot thickens. Basically, my opinion of it, looking at everything I've looked at so far, is it's not Russia. It's not Russia. And this is being used to ramp up tensions with Russia, to ramp up tensions with another nuclear power in order to increase military expenditure and several other things. I'll keep you informed on it. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe. Please hit the bell. I'm having people every day now say to me, "Hey, I'm unsubscribed. What's going on?" It's like, well, I'm getting probably 10 or 20 people drop off my list every day. And people are just saying, "Hey, I didn't unsubscribe." So please subscribe. Please hit the bell. Thank you very much if you're a patron. There's a link down there to Patreon. To support what I do, I need your help. I don't get any advertising from YouTube or anything like that. So please, if you can afford to send me a couple of bucks or $5 or whatever it is a month to keep me going on this, to help pay my bills, then I would really, really appreciate it. And also, I have applied to Steam it. For those of you who have asked, I applied, I think, Saturday last week. So it's been about 5 or 6 days. It usually takes up to 9 days, I believe. If you're not a member of Steam it yet, please join, because a lot of my videos are going to be on there, and I'll actually make money, hopefully, from views on there in the future. So yeah, until next time, let's hope this doesn't end in World War III, because it really could. And until next time, thanks very much for watching, and peace.